Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to make another LPS custom, and this one is gonna be a mix of two different animals. So I put them onto a wheel, and the first spin I got a swan, which would be the head, and the second one would be the body, and I got elephant. So it's going to be a very interesting combination, since also both of these figures are from different generations, so joining them will be very interesting. And here we have both of them. We have this absolutely adorable elephant and this beautiful little swan. So of course I need to remove the heads first to be able to join them together with the different body. And for the swan that was way more of a struggle than for the elephant because the neck pack's a bit different. So I actually had to heat it up double and then pry it out, and for some reason it was really stuck in there, so I even had to use my pliers. Also, both of the neck packs once again were a bit rusty. The swan one a bit more than the elephant one, but both of them had definitely a slight bit more rust. So I did the same treatment that I did last time with them. I scrubbed them, and then I needed to actually whittle down the elephant one a little bit, since the peg would not fit into this one, since that one was a bit smaller. But after a little bit of cleanup and fit testing, everything worked and it was time to modify things. So I cut off the bulk of the tail, and then I noticed the elephant had some weird super glue residue on its feet. Maybe it was glued down onto something. I'm not too sure, but I removed that with just a nail file. That worked actually pretty well. And then it was time to start sculpting. So originally I started out with trying this with clay, but that didn't work out, just normal oven clay. So instead I went and got my epoxy sculpt out again, and that's what I'm going to use, since it is going to work, I guess, a little bit better, hopefully. So I essentially made these long leaf type shape, crossed them over each other, rolled one side a little bit so it's smaller, and then flattened them. And these are gonna be the ears and the part of the front face. And for those of you who couldn't tell yet, I guess it's a bit hard to tell, but I'm making a griffin. This idea actually is not mine. It's the idea of a friend of mine, because I was stumped on what to do with this. Basically, I was sitting there thinking and thinking, and I already shared the picture with that friend, and they were like, hey, make this a mythical creature, this will fit really well. And I thought that that was an excellent idea. But instead of making a typical griffin, aka lion's body and hind legs and I guess eagle's head and front talons, I want to keep some of the features of the old figures. So I decided I'm going to keep the full-on elephant body, and I'm not gonna modify any of the front legs. And I'm also gonna keep the little I don't know what it's called, but the thing above the beak that little swan had, and I'm just going to decorate. So I added the ears with some feathers, and then I added some neck feathers that I basically detailed with my little silicone shaper here, and I also added some feather details just with my X-Acto knife there. And then for the wings I kept them pretty basic, and I only sculpted the inside for now, since that would be harder to reach once I have them folded up. And I tried to sculpt the outside at first, but it didn't really work, so I just stayed with the inside, really shaped that out in the way I wanted to, and I really was hoping that I could carve this epoxy sculpt once it was hardened. Now at this point for the wings, the clay was a bit drier already, because it had reacted a bit already, and it was some time since I did start on the head and the neck ruffles, so it didn't quite stick, but I managed to get it stuck enough to where the shape was working out really nicely. Also, for some reason on this head I had trouble sticking the details onto. At least the right-sided ear, like feather detail, came off way too easy. And then for the wings, I thought they were stuck, but they weren't, so when I started detailing and carving and marking out where I want the, like, outside feather details, they just plopped right off, which was actually very convenient since it was way easier to carve them like this. And I'm using a very sharp wood carving tool here to, like, basically replicate the inside feathers on the outside, and then I'm also using an X-Acto knife, as you can see here, to add some inside, like, feather details essentially. And here we have the wings, and I think they look absolutely adorable. And then of course it was time to join head and body back together. I did break the ear, of course. Cannot do this without, like, breaking things off, but a little bit of super glue helped it, and then it was finally time for painting. And actually after I applied super glue to the ear and, like, glued on the wings with that and the ears, it was very sturdy and I didn't have to worry about things breaking off. Now, luckily I realized before I put my Mod Podge paint on there that I totally forgot to remove the shiny bits of paint on the beak and the eyes, so I did roughly remove those with some acetone before I painted it. And this is basically just some grey, like, miniature model paint. I'm using Vallejo here because I really like their consistency and color variations. And I just mixed it with some Mod Podge, essentially, or in this case decoupage. It's essentially the exact same thing. And this is just so that the paint sticks. I did this with the last figure too and it worked like a charm. So I also added it to the entire grey base coat. And then I wanted to keep the colors pretty natural and neutral. Looked like a lot of Griffin pictures, and a lot of them kept, like, most of the colors that an eagle has, so like browns, darker and lighter grays. So that's what I decided to go with for this entire figure. And then to, like, help the details, I'm going to also add a wash later. So the head stays a lighter gray, the, like, ear feather details are going to be painted like a creamier, like, light gray white. And then the body is going to stay this really nice warm brown. And I also painted the little thing over the beak in this matching brown, since I thought that the contrast would be really nice. I thought of dark grey at first, but then I wanted to add, like, a little bit of warmth to the face to also match the eyes later, and to, like, break up the colors between the grey and the yellow beak, basically. And for, like, some of the paints I needed just one coat, yellow mostly needed two, but that's okay since yellow is not that covering, and the beak turned out really, really vibrant. And then it was finally time to paint the eyes. Now going with, like, a light cream, like, yellowy brown tone here. So I'm starting out with a white base, just like I did with the previous custom, and then I'm painting, like, some rings essentially, going with, like, this orangey cream tone and then with, like, the yellow. And then lastly with the pupils black, and this actually went super well. I didn't have to correct practically anything, and I was very surprised with myself that I got this first try. Of course, this luck is very rare, especially with eye costumes. So I was super happy, and I even managed to get the, like, little outline details of the eyes pretty even. Like, I only needed to touch up a little bit in the white, and later on with the grey on the outside. And to make it look a bit more bird-like, but also give it this one, like, elegance, I also added these, like, little, like, I guess eyelashes on the outside, you can call them. And then it was time for fixing things up and adding some of the minor details, like the little, like, not claws, they're more like toes, I guess, of the elephant, and the little tail detail. And since I want all the details of the feathers to pop really nicely, because I spent, like, a lot of time carving them out, I also added a like blackish bronze wash, and I'm making sure to like dab them up like a bit more from the body and stuff. I still want the texture, so I'm dabbing it off in like a very rough, patchy way, and also from the feathers. And then it was finally time to add the eye shines and bring a bit of life to this figure, and this looks so adorable. I'm going in here with some nail polish, but beware, do not gloss eyes with nail polish immediately. I did the same thing as last time. I added a couple coats of matte spray varnish first. I'm using the Molotov variety, since that worked super well for me, just some basic acrylic spray varnish. And I added like 3 coats, 3 really thin coats, and the reason why you can then just go over it really carefully with some high gloss nail polish is because it basically seals the acrylic paint underneath. Now I did go in with the varnish early though and smudged a tiny bit in the eye, and you can barely see it in like my reveal shots here, but this figure still turned out so adorable, and it's really only like barely noticeable, so I don't really care. It's only really noticeable when there's like a direct light shining on it. But I'm totally fine with it. I didn't want to repaint the eyes since they worked out so well. And the reason why I also choose nail polish, gloss nail polish, as like a very thin coat on top is because it gives a super nice shine. You can of course go the safe route and layer some high gloss acrylic varnish onto the eyes in like multiple thin coats to get like a same nice shine, or some resin if you feel like it, like some UV resin, but as I always mention, like UV resin tends to yellow over the years, especially if you want to display this figure like somewhere where it's a bit more light and sunny, like on a windowsill. And since that's my plan, and I even used UV resistant varnish here, I'm rather not take any chances and use resin. But yeah, overall I'm super happy with this mashup. This was honestly a lot of fun. I was really enjoying it. It was a little brain teaser, and I think I really managed to like make it griffin shape with keeping the essence of both figures. I really think the elephant body is super adorable, and I think the swan is also decently recognizable still, although I first thought it was like a turkey or something with the little like accentuated detail over the beak, but it's still super pretty and adorable, and I'm so happy how I managed to like carve the wings. It was such a process. I did like cut it down harshly in the video, but that took like 1.5 hours essentially per wing to get those details, and they pop super nicely and they look so pretty. I'm actually surprised how easy and satisfying it was to like carve this clay, or I guess epoxy, you know, is like an epoxy clay, I guess. But yeah, I was super surprised how easy it was. I didn't think it would be that easy, and I was halfway into thinking that I may have to do this with some oven baked clay, but no, it was so fun actually to carve. So maybe in the future, now that I know I can actually use this clay for more things where I need like double-sided things. But yeah, overall I had great ton of fun making this. I love the outcome, but let me know in the comments down below what you think of this figure. And maybe would you have chosen a different creature if you had this combination of figures? And also let me know, should I try this again? I do have some figures left, and also a cat head left, and I think it would be very fun to try this again. But as always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!